Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Rent Prep for Landlords. And this week we got a guest for you. He's quite the interesting fellow. I got to talk to Mike for a little bit on the phone. I really enjoyed our conversation. He's a friend of Tim Shiner, if you recall from that podcast. And Mike, before I introduce you here, I just wanted to give people a little bit of background about what you do and a little bit of your history. So Mike owns Reliance Mortgage Company, and he started it in 1989 with 5 employees. And he has pretty much worked on any loan you can imagine. He is they range from $35,000 to $11.5 million on a single deal that he's closed. And a little bit of his credentials. Mike received the Century 21 top listing salesperson in a 3-state region from 1971 to 81. He was named the 1995 prestigious Entrepreneur of the Year by Inc. magazine, and he was listed the Who's Who American Businessmen of 2000. Was recently approved to teach Texas Real Estate Commission continuing education classes for realtors. So that's a lot of stuff to throw out there, but Mike, just want to give our listeners an idea of who we have on the podcast today, and thanks for joining us here.
Well, hell, that sounds pretty impressive to me.
Welcome to the Rent Prep for Landlords podcast. And now your hosts, Stephen White and Eric Worrell.
I can't believe I did all this stuff, but I did do it all. Yeah, my background, I started buying and selling real estate when I was about 18 or 19 years old, when I was in just out of high school and in college. And the first house I bought, I actually bought it for income. I paid $3,250, put $500 down on it. And about that time, my wife and I were building a new house and obviously went over budget. And so I called a friend of mine who's in the mortgage business, and he said, "Listen, Mike, you can sell that house." And I paid $3,250 for about $11,000. And I remember I bought that house for $500 down, and payment for $50 a month. So I put it on the market, and I actually sold it myself about a week later for $11,500, and I made about $7,000 or $8,000 out of it in a period of a month and a half, 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to thinking that's more money I make in a full 3 months what a job I'm at right now. So I started buying and selling houses, and eventually I was a sales manager for a relatively large appliance company here in Dallas, and a parts distributorship for appliance parts. Mm-hmm. So I resigned, and they wanted 6 months notice because I was a fairly big part of the company. I gave them 6 months notice, and after that I jumped into real estate business. And I first started out by buying and selling houses, just flipping them. My average profit was probably $3,000, and this was back, 40, 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. So it was a pretty good money back then. I was doing about 5 or 6 a month at that time, running ads in the newspaper and running them down. Then I started venturing into rental properties where I could assume FHA notes or VA notes without qualifying, just pay somebody $500,000 for their equity and then turn around and rent it for cash flow. So it just evolved and evolved and evolved. And eventually I got up to where believe this or not, I probably own 25,000 homes in the United States. In the Dallas Metroplex, I used to buy 100 to 200 a month from FHA. Mm-hmm. And so that's many years ago. I haven't done that for a long time, but I can tell you what pitfalls. Well, first of all, investors are buying single family homes, which most investors are doing, need to kind of identify what their goal is. There's 2 or 3 goals, in my opinion. There's one for appreciation. And I say that with all sincerity. For example, if you buy a $400,000 home, let's talk, or $300,000 home, it's generally a lot better home in a lot better area in a better school district. And if you're buying for appreciation, I would definitely look at school districts, because people are buying in school districts these days. You can go from one part of the Metroplex to 2 blocks away to another school district, and the rent will be anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a month more to the school system. So that's an important thing reading for investors to look at, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But if you're buying them to retire on, in other words, you don't care about cash flow. You're looking for appreciation, because the more expensive home you buy, the less it's going to cash flow. For example, if you can buy a $100,000 home, the rent in Metroplex is probably $1,500 a month for a $100,000 home, where the rent on a $300,000 home is maybe $2,500 a month. So there's a big gap between what you pay for the property and what you can rent it for. So if you're going for pure cash flow and no appreciation, where you just want cash flow in your pocket every month, then I would buy less expensive homes. If you're going for appreciation in better school districts, then cash flow may not be a significant factor to you, but your appreciation may be 10 to 12% versus maybe 5% on a $100,000 home.
Okay. And
if that makes any sense to you guys.
No, it absolutely does. And I have to say that usually when we have a guest that starts to really talk for a while, I try to bring it in a little bit to try to cut him off. But that was great. You're just giving great information, so you can just go with it, I think. I really love that. As far as the on your end of things. So you're still working like six days a week. I hear you're a pretty busy guy.
I work half day on Saturday, yeah, and I enjoy working. I'm 74 years old, and I love the action.
Yeah,
I mean, I've got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of business I run, but and it's fun. I don't ever want to retire. My wife thinks I'm crazy, which is okay with me because she's a little nuts too. But in any event, like if you're buying houses, a lot of investors that, let's say your income's pretty substantial. Let's say your income's $150,000 a year, and you don't need cash flow. Then one thing you can do if you're buying it for appreciation retirement down the road, say 10, 15 years down the road, then I would look at financing those for 15 years instead of a 30-year, because you're not looking for cash flow and you have enough disposable income to be able to support them if you can. But the difference in a 15-year note and a 30-year note, if you're buying investment property, a 15-year note pays down 25% principal balance every 5 years, where a 30-year note pays down 7%. So again, if you're 50 years old and looking to retire at 65 years old and you want some rental income on free and clear property to help you retire and live a better life, then look at a 15-year note. They also offer 20, 25-year notes. So look at what you can afford. Look at what your downside is, but you may want to look at 15-year notes. If you're buying purely for cash flow, then I would not do a 30-year note because you don't care about the appreciation in the property. You're looking for pure cash flow, so I'd finance those on a 30-year note. It's just kind of a rule of thumb for me. Most investors.
You make a good point about having different options there. Is it smart for an investor to try to find a loan officer or a loan company that understands the different strategies and can direct them in that way?
Well, here's one of the problems that the small investors have. Fannie and Freddie will only loan on 10 properties. That's a max you can have. And one of them is going to be your homestead. So what a lot of people do when they're if they're newcomers in this field, they'll buy a house and they'll live in it for maybe 6 months or a year, rent it, and then buy a little bigger house. So they buy them as homesteads going in. And the reason they do that is because they're less down payment and the interest rates are certainly lower than an investor. An investor is going to pay a premium because Fannie and Freddie, in fact, FHA nationwide won't even do an investment property. I don't care what you pay down. They won't do them. Neither will VA. Those are only occupied homes. But conventional will do them, and they want 20 to 25% down, generally better credit. And the rates are higher because their goal is to get Americans in homes, not to help investors make money is the way they look at it. So from a practical point of view, a lot of people I know have started out 10 years ago, and they may own 15 homes a day. They bought the first one as a homestead, did it for 6 months, then put it on the market and bought a little bigger home. But you can't, for example, call a loan officer and go, look, I'm living in a $500,000 home. I'm going to buy a $100,000 home. I'm going to live in it. They don't go for that. I mean, it has to make sense. So if you move up the ladder, you're fine. For example, if you had a $300,000 home you live in and you want to buy a $350,000 home, you're probably okay there. They may question a little bit, but it's not illegal. The law says that you intend to occupy the house. So a lot of people start out that way. And for investors that are at that threshold, here's another thing. Any one mortgage company will not finance more than 3 or 4 of them that I know. And we sell off to probably 15, 20 mortgage companies. Sell notes to. We close them on our lines of credit and sell them off. But no one investor or mortgage company is going to take risk on more than 3 or 4 rental properties because if the economy turns around, that's the first thing it goes. Homesteads are a lot more protected than rental property. So they won't take coverage on but maybe 3 or 4 homes. And then you have to find another mortgage company or a mortgage company that's got multiple outlets where you can finance 3 here, 3 there, 4 here, et cetera. But my advice is when you get up to 10, is to take those 10 and go to a local bank, and particularly a smaller local bank, a fairly large local bank, not B of A, Chase, Citibank, Wells Fargo. They're just too big, and you're just a number with those guys. But if you take it to a smaller bank, and let's say you've got 10 properties that are worth $1.5 million for target purposes. Let's say you owe $800,000 on them. You know, if they're cash flowing significantly, well, a bank will loan you maybe $1 million on them, take those as collateral, pay off all the houses, and you got one note, and that's that they count that against you. Then if you want to start buying it individual houses, you can start buying them again. But I constantly package investor loans together. The terms are not as good, the rates are a little bit higher, but if you're trying to build a portfolio, it's the only way you can do it that I know of. That makes sense, Steve?
Yeah, it definitely makes sense.
You guys buy and sell homes?
I've got one rental property and then just my homestead. And Steve, you were in rental property for a little bit.
Yep. And I know that we were just talking about exactly what you were saying there, Mike, where, if you got a lot of our landlords are, just breaking into the business. They've got a handful of properties, but they want to know how to scale, how to build their portfolio, how to go from 1 to 5, then 5 to 10.
I'm going to tell you, gentlemen, it takes a lot of hell of hard work. Yeah. Anybody that reaches, I've given a lot of seminars in my lifetime, and most of these people that tout real estate, they want you to buy their package of tapes and records and books and all that BS for $1,500. And I've read through that stuff. I've been on stage with Robert Kiyosaki and, the guy who wrote Rich Dad and Poor Dad several times. And quite frankly, he's a sharp guy. But when it comes to actually getting out there in the pits, and dig it down and find a property, those guys may have done 3 or 4 deals in their lifetime. And they write a book on how good they are at it. I can tell you this, it takes a hell of a lot of work and a hell of a lot of perseverance, and do not give up. I mean, I chased rental property when I was buying houses for 4 or 5 years before I got to be able to sell them. Mm-hmm. 4 or 5 years, so I'll tell you a quick story. When I was probably 25 years old, I was driving down the street in a part of Dallas, and I saw 8 rental homes, and one of them had a sign on them. There was only 8 homes on that block, and they were 3 and 4 bedroom brick homes. They were worth about $18,000 a piece. And I went back and looked it up on who owned them, and it was the name Evelyn in Waxahachie, Texas, suburb of Dallas. I called her on the phone and said, Miss Sibley, would you be interested in selling homes? She said, well, what would you pay me for them? I might sell them. And I said, I'd give you $64,000, $8,000 a piece. They're worth $18,000 a piece. She went off on me, called me every name in the book, called me a crook and thief, and she'd never talked to me and slammed the phone down. I go, well, okay. And I don't blame her. I was trying to steal houses. I mean, you can't tell somebody when you're trying to steal something from me, it's a good deal. Mm-hmm. So tell people the truth. I want to make some money on this transaction. Why do you think I'm buying it? But you don't have to repair it or whatever the case may be. So I'm going to tell you this quick story because this is what takes people to make money in this business that are truly want to make money in the business. It's not a part-time deal. It's a full-time deal. You may have another job, but if you're going to work this thing, you got to work it full-time. So I had this little green book I wrote $1 million on the outside of it. And until I made $1 million out of that book, I wouldn't get rid of it. So every year for 4 or 5 years on Friday afternoon, between 3 and 5, I'd call customers I'd maybe talked to 6 months ago, a year ago, 3 months ago. And I'd call them on the phone and say, Mr. Johnson, I called you about buying your home. Are you interested in selling it? No, thank you. I appreciate it. And every Friday afternoon, I'd call Miss Sibley and Evelyn. And the conversation lasted about 30 seconds before she cussed me out and said she'd never sell me the homes and hung up on me. So after about 3 or 4 years, my staff started laughing at me and said, Mike, what is wrong with you? That lady's never going to sell you those homes. I said, hey, it takes her 15 seconds to hang up on me and call me a thief. So I don't care. What do you care? Not your time, it's my time. So after 5 years, and this is a true story, she helped me God, I called her on the phone one Friday afternoon and she was crying. And I said, Miss Sibley, what happened? She said, somebody stuffed up the back of me and hit me in the head with a pipe and took my purse with all my rent money and cash and drove off in my new Cadillac, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And I said, oh, Miss Sibley, I'm so sorry. Do you want to sell your house? She said, yes, I want to sell them. I went down there and bought those houses for $60,000 instead of $64,000 cash and made about $80,000 off of them in 2 or 3 months. Mm-hmm. That's what I say perseverance. So these books that say, oh, it's easy, how you make $1 million. I actually wrote a book and took it to a seminar one time. And I said, this book costs $1,600, but it's worth every dime of it. It's going to tell you how to make $1 million without any work. And you opened the book up and had one page that said, good luck. It ain't going to happen. It's not going to happen, gentlemen.
How many of those books did you sell?
I wasn't trying to sell it. It was a joke.
Yeah.
But everybody else before me on the program was selling books and tapes because it was a big CBS forum here in Dallas with a lot of investors. Mm-hmm. And it was just kind of funny because I listened to all these people saying, if you just buy books and tapes, then you'll learn how to do it. BS. It's a lot of hard work. Mm-hmm. Trust me when I say that. Well, so, and another thing, don't be squeamish about making offers. Who gives a damn? If you're out looking for rental property, go through the MLS and make offers on any number of homes. You look for homes that have been on the market for a while, maybe 6 months that hadn't sold. Look for homes that need repairs. Because a lot of homes that need repairs, you're going to get a better buy. And don't be scared to go in and spend $10,000, $15,000 a home to make it, to rehab it and bring it up to date. Because the ones in tip-top shape are going to bring top dollar. The ones that you're after, you're going to try to buy them below market, even if you're renting or flipping them. It doesn't make any difference. But I'm just saying, just because a house has been on the market for a while, doesn't eliminate it. You can just make a lower offer, and you'll notice the prices dropping in MLS. So if you've got a realtor, and I'll tell you something else, that if I had a realtor that's representing you, I would say, look, I'll buy an X amount house for you, but I want a deal cut on the commission. Now, you may or not be able to do that. It depends on what you're trying to do. I'm not trying to cut realtors out of the equation at all, nor would I. But if you're buying 10, 15 homes a year from a realtor, that's a big ticket item for them. Mm-hmm. So they may cut you a deal where they pay 1% of your closing costs, or maybe do it for 1.5%, because all they're doing is writing contracts for you. Mm-hmm. So there's just a lot of ways to find rental property, but a lot of it's hard work. Mm-hmm. You know, and I don't know about different counties and tax sales, but tax sales are a good place to find rental properties, where you can buy tax liens and take over the first lien note. But it really is, I can't tell you how many people think it's easy to make money in this business, and it's not. It's hard as hell to make any big money. Yeah. You know, so I'm just telling you, they got to roll up their sleeves and get out and beat the streets and find stuff.
Mike, so going back in your history, so you've done really well in real estate. Did you ever have a moment yourself where you think you almost threw the towel in and you just, said, I had enough of this, I want to sell it all off? Or did you ever have that kind of moment? If the listener's listening right now and thinking, geez, I want out of this.
Yes, I did. God, after the mortgage meltdown in 2007 and 8, it destroyed a lot of fairly big mortgage companies. We were doing maybe $250 million a month in mortgage business. Mm-hmm. And I lost slabs of credit through no fault of our own. We were selling a lot of loans to Countrywide, IndyMac, Chevy Chase, a lot of big companies like that all kind of went upside down or quit buying notes. The banks got real concerned about it being able to buy off our warehouse lines, so they just shut off warehouse lines like that overnight. So I decided, since they destroyed my business, although I didn't go out of business, I stayed in business and downscaled and built it back up over the last 5-6 years. But I started buying rental houses for my wife and I. And I was up to about 10 or 12 of them. And they're all, are you all familiar with Section 8?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's where the government pays, and there's good advantages and disadvantages of owning Section 8 properties.
Sure.
But in any event, I had about 10 or 12 of them. And I, fortunately, did not have to manage them, although I would have. I was just busy doing other things. And my wife, Kathy, was managing those properties. And after about a year, she said, Mike, I don't care what we make off these houses. I am so tired of people calling me with their commodes stopped up at 9 o'clock at night and the refrigerator's out and all kind of stuff, because they don't take care of properties for the most part. Mm-hmm. It's just part of the game that you're playing. So it wasn't because of me. And then I was making more money than I could make in the rental market on it. The rental market was a long play for me, but the short play for me was this generating income from buying and selling properties or making mortgage loans or whatever. So we actually sold those properties for probably 75 cents on the dollar just to get rid of all in one package. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't because they wasn't making money. It was just a hassle. Yeah. And again, it is a hassle. One of the things we could have done was turn over to a management company and let them deal with the problems. But we didn't. I didn't need the income. I didn't need the money. So we actually dumped them. That's the only time in my life, but not because they were bad investments at all. It's just because we didn't want to screw with them anymore. Mm-hmm. Right. And particularly my wife.
Sometimes that's the most important factor right there, right?
Well, you know what they say, when mom's not happy, nobody's happy.
Nobody's happy. Oh, yeah, yeah. Well,
I've been doing a lot of talking. What do you guys, what would you like to know about rental property?
Well, something I was interested in is when I bought my first property, it was a duplex. I was living in one end of it and running the downstairs at that time. And I had the option to go to a loan officer to go through the process. And for whatever reason, I just got sketched out by it. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this by myself. I don't want a middleman involved in the process. So maybe that was ignorant on my behalf. But if somebody's listening and maybe they've never done business with a loan officer before, what should they be looking for if they're going to get in that relationship? And why should they use a loan officer as opposed to just trying to research this themselves?
Well, because a loan officer should know more programs, more down payments. And there's a lot of places, for example, even though Fannie and Freddie may want 20% down on the house, some banks look at 15, 10% down, depending on how strong you are. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't make a difference how strong you are. If you're going to Fannie, Freddie, regular conventional lending, you maybe go to a bank and get a different option. I'd look for a loan officer, quite frankly, that's had some experience, although that's not the overwhelming fact. I've got young loan officers that work for me for 2 or 3 years that know more than 75% of loan officers have been in business 15, 20 years. I think they have to have a knowledge of investment property, how it works, and they have to have different options. For example, can you take a loan to a bank instead of Fannie or Freddie? Can you do a bank statement loan, for example? There's money available all over the United States called hard money, where somebody with bad credit, or maybe not great credit, with very little income, can get a loan from a hard money lender anywhere from 8 to 10, 12%, 3 or 4 points. And they just look at pure equity in the property. It's just a asset-based risk is what they're looking at. They think the asset's worth more than what it's worth. And a lot of people are forced to do that. You'd be surprised the number of people that buy and sell houses in Dallas or rent them go to hard money lenders. Mm. And I've never understood that. And a lot of people, I can tell you this, they don't know how to go to find sources. So if it were me, let me say this. There are times when I borrow considerable amount of money every month. There are times when I'm full at one bank, or a bank maybe have enough product that I've got that doesn't do it. So it wouldn't be unusual for me to go drive down the street and see a new bank that's opened up and stop in and see them. Mm. They don't eat you. They don't tear you up. Just say, hey, go in. I've got good credit. I've got good income. Are y'all loaning money on investment properties? What's your rates? What's your terms? And they'll tell you yes or no. And banks right now are looking for good business. But a lot of investors think they're stuck in this deal where they have to go to a hard money or predatory lender and or limited by the Fannie and Freddie deal with putting 20% down. That's just not true. Again, I'd call them local, fairly big regional banks, maybe $50 million up banks, because they're a lot less bureaucratic. You can get stuff done quicker, and you're a name and a face there. Where at Wells Fargo, and I love Wells Fargo. I have nothing against big banks. It's just that I prefer not to deal with them because they're too damn big.
Okay. Is there like a good question that somebody can ask if they're maybe in between different loan officers and they're trying to pick somebody who could be a good partner for them if they're trying to build a rental portfolio? Like, what's a good question you could ask a loan officer to be like, this guy knows what he's talking about, or this guy has no clue what he's talking about when it comes to rental properties?
Well, I'd always tell a loan officer, even if it's one you've been dealing with, that you're going to shop this around. You want to put that seed in their head, even if you're not going to do it. Want to put the seed in their head, and then I'd say, what is the least down payment, the best rate I can get? And I would check with a couple other companies. I would check ones that are fairly good size. But again, size doesn't is not going to determine whether they're good or bad. Some small brokers like us, a broker shop, we probably do, and I'm not bragging, I'm just telling you facts. We can probably do more loans than any shop in the state of Texas. Because we strive for those. We know how to do them. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people call me on the phone. I get a lot of banks call me on the phone, say, hey, Mike, can you take this loan and do it? It may be a bank statement loan. Because Fannie and Freddie, let me say this, on a homestead, you have to qualify and have the ability to repay it. That's the only requirement you've got. You have to be able to repay it, good credit, and have the money down and have the income to support the debt. Where an investment property, there's no federal requirements that you have to have the ability to repay it. So it's easier sometimes to get a investment loan in a bank than it is a homestead loan. Probably you're actually living in a second home. Mm-hmm. So that's something also to consider. How you're going to delineate the property. So you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing that you mentioned, I just wanted to touch on real quick, experience that you have with buying tax liens. So that's something that I've got a little bit of knowledge, but I'd love to hear your perspective on it and your experience.
If I were doing that, I would go to a title company in the area that has got an attorney that's familiar with tax liens, because they work differently in all counties. They really do. In Texas, I know, in Dallas, for example, you can go buy a tax lien for maybe $5,000. The house that the tax lien's on may be a $300,000 home. I can tell you in Texas, it wipes out the first lien. And so you can't just go foreclose it because you paid for a tax lien. You have to give the lender notice that, hey, you're in first position, and they have the right to pay you off, and they have to pay you a 25% profit in Texas. That's the way it works in Texas. But tax liens are a good way to buy properties. And it's a longer seed time, because in Texas, you have the right of rescission to rescind that loan or to rescind the note for 2 years. In other words, you can step in and pay the tax lien off within 2 years. After 2 years, it's fair game. So a lot of people buy these tax liens and never contact the people. And after 2 years, they'll pop them and say, look, you're in my house. It's been 2 years. I can tell you this, it's really for more sophisticated buyers buying tax liens. But again, I'm hesitant to tell you how it's done, because y'all's audience, I'm assuming, is nationwide.
Yep.
Then I would get a title company attorney. That's another thing. If you're buying a lot of rental property, I'd pick one title company you can use and see what their escrow fees are. If they're normally $500 a file, they may, if you do some volume with it, maybe down to $200 a file, $250 a file. You're always trying to save money going into this stuff.
Right. So what's one of the biggest mistakes that you've seen investors make when it comes to lending and scaling and building a portfolio? Is there any one thing that you can kind of pull out and say, yeah, I've seen them fall into this trap over and over?
Yeah, I would say going in there, they pay too much for properties. They get into a contract where there's multiple contracts coming in on the property, and they lose what they're going in for. I can tell you this: when I was buying properties and I bought a lot at auctions, stuff like that, if I had my mind made, if I wasn't going to pay more than $100,000 for a piece of property, it wouldn't make any difference how many people were bidding on it. But if I could buy it for $101,000, $102,000, I wouldn't buy it. I had a price set in my mind, and I wouldn't vary above it. So if you're trying to buy a property, you've got to buy it right. You have to buy it under market going in to make any money, in my opinion, even from a rental point of view or a resale point of view. So, and don't be squeamish if you're offering somebody 75 cents on the dollar and then subtract. My formula when I was buying homes, at least 75% below market price, less any closing costs, less any repairs. So if the closing costs were, say, 3% of a purchase price, let's say a house is worth $100,000. He did $12,000 worth of work on it. I'd going backwards. I'd offer him $75,000 less, another $4,000 for closing costs, less $15,000 for repairs, and my offer would be $60,000 on it. Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't make any difference if they were offended by it. I don't care what they're going to do to you. Mm-hmm. I mean,
never
they can't shoot you for making. Yeah. And you never know. You just never know. Right. But the way contracts are structured, at least in Texas, there's an option period. So I could, for example, if I wanted to buy 50 homes today, I could put out 50 offers today and put an option period in there, not even look at the homes. Mm-hmm. I mean, not even actually go out there and look at them and send out 50 contracts a day, ridiculous offers at 75 cents at market of what they're asking for it. And maybe 1 out of 50 will take that off.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Before I even looked at it. So I put up what they call an option fee of $200, and I lose that. And if I don't close it, then I have 15 days to go out and inspect the property and make sure I want to close it. And then the option period is over, and your period to close is generally 30 days later. So you can option a lot. I don't know how that works in other states, and I really am hesitant to talk about it. But if they have options, you can make offers on a lot of property that you don't even look at. It's, to me, now, if you're just looking at one house, you can go out and look at it, waste all that time. But I'm a volume buyer. If I buy it, I want to buy in volume. So I have no problem putting out contracts without even looking at them with an option period, because I know I'm out $200 if I don't buy it. And if they take my ridiculous low offer, I'm probably going to buy that property. Mm-hmm. Then if I go out and look at it, it's got a lot of latent defects, foundation issues, roofing issues, that sort of thing. It's something you ought to take a look at. Another thing about buying and flipping houses, FHA has got what they call a modified cost approach. And a modified cost approach is if you buy a house and sell it within the first 90 days, I understand there's some new regulations coming out on it, but you can't even sell an FHA for 90 days. Now, that may have changed. You might check with your loan officer on that. But in that 90-day period, you can't change. And then after you sell it in the first 6 months, they want you to make a reasonable profit, FHA, reasonable profit. What that is, nobody's ever told me, but I think it's about 20%. Sometimes you live with it, and I'm sure it's maybe different in all areas of the country, but you can buy a house and flip it conventional, which a lot of people think FHA is a better way to go. A lot of people think conventional. It really doesn't make it. What suits the buyer that's buying the house is concerned. But from that point of view, look at what you're buying and how soon you want to flip it. You may have to flip it conventional rather than FHA, or be stuck with the house for 90 days FHA. There again, talk to a local owner, so they'll be able to tell you that information. If they don't know it, tell them to find out for sure. Okay. You need to know those things for sure going in.
All right, Mike, I'm curious. You said you had I don't know, do you still have the property management company, but at one point you were managing like over thousands of rentals, you said?
Mm-hmm. So about 25,000.
Yeah.
About 2,000 homes, single family homes, and about probably 3,000, 4,000 condos, and about maybe 15,000 apartments.
Yeah. So a good amount.
Real estate service. Yeah.
So what's like the craziest tenant story that you have from that? Do you have anything that sticks out? Because you got to have some amazing stories.
I actually, there's a standard contract in Texas, rental contract. And because most of my life I dealt in lower price properties because I like the cash flow better.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather own 10 $200,000 homes than one $2 million home.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always dealt in not low income, but pretty marginal, a little bit above that.
Yeah, and that's
I'd
in the Dallas area mostly, or
yes,
yeah,
yes, for the most part. When I was renting property, we had a year lease against them. In Texas, again, it varies from state to state, but I was talking about specifically about Texas. In Texas, if I went by, let's say I owned a $300,000 home, which would be on the high side of what I was doing, but I owned a few of them. I'd go by there and look at them. I try to get by every 3 or 4 months and look at them to see what kind of shape they were in, inspect them. And I'd go buy some houses in the summertime. This happened to me 2 or 3 times. And I went by a house and looked at it. And they hadn't watered the yard for 3 months, and it was really hot this summer. And my foundation was cracking. So I called the guy on the phone. He paid like a slot machine. Mm-hmm. And I said, look, you need to take care of it. It was in the lease agreement. They take care of the yard. And he said, well, I'm not going to water your yard. To hell with it. I'm paying you on time. What are you going to do about it? So I filed him on a JP court. The JP threw it out of court. And he said, the only thing I'm here to see is that if the guy pays you on time, so you got to sue him in civil court. And I said, that's it. I went back to Boston. I called my attorney. I said, listen, I want you to draw me a rental agreement that I can kick those son of bitches out if they screw up my house. And so I came up with a month rental agreement, not a year-to-year rental agreement. Mm-hmm. And in that rental agreement, I could raise the rate from $500 a month to $800 a month with a 30-day notice overnight. And I didn't use that for people that were paying me on time. I used it for people that tore up my property, and I wanted to get them out of there. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget, I had a federal judge. It was a circuit judge that came in that was maybe here 3 or 4 months, and then he moved on to another city. They called him circuit judges back then. And he wanted to rent a property for me it was about a $300,000 home in Richmond. It was like $1,000, $1,200 a month. And he said, send me that's before they had email. I faxed him over the rental agreement. And he called me back on the phone and said, I've read this, son. And he said, this is the most one-sided thing I've ever. He said, nobody would ever sign it. I said, yeah, I got 3,000 or 4,000 of those signed. And I said, Your Honor, I've never kicked anybody out that paid my rent on time and took care of my house. It's designed to keep flakes out of my homes and kick them out when they tear them up. So if you don't want to sign it, I understand. I agree with you. It is all jaded my way. Yeah. There's no question about it. I won't clean it up. It's designed for people not tearing up my house. He got to laughing about it. He said, I understand what you're saying, son. He signed the lease. He read it to him. And I did make an exception. I read it to him for 6 months' time. I also have those lease agreements. When they move out, they have to give me all the keys. It has to be in room clean condition. The yard has to be mowed to get their deposit back. And I honestly would give them the deposit back. I wouldn't out to rip anybody off. That I've never done that in my lifetime, nor would I. Mm-hmm. So if they left the house in room clean condition, I had no problem in giving their money back if they gave proper notices. Mm-hmm. Just be fair with you. Treat people like you like to be treated.
Sure.
But that's really the way I look at it.
But make sure that you have a landlord-friendly contract in place with them.
Well, and don't ever go. You talk about funny stories. One thing my wife always complained, I got a big heart, and I probably lose too much money a year loaning people money and helping people out, but I don't care. I like it. Mm-hmm. I really like helping people. I really do that. And I mean that with all sincerity. And so when I first got in the rental market, bear in mind, these were lower income houses, maybe $100 a month, $150 a month. And $150 to these people meant a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And so when I first started out, they used to pay me rent at my office. And then I moved to bigger offices where it was like a belt bank vault when you wanted. We had bulletproof glass because a lot of our money was in cash. Mm-hmm. And it was a fairly well-run operation. But when I first started out and these people would come to me that maybe paid $100 a month in rent and go, look, Mike, my son is sick. My car broke down. I've had an extra expense. My mother needs some help or whatever. And I go, okay, I'll let you slide. Next month comes around, now they'll be $200. I'd call them on the phone and say, okay, I still don't have the money, but I'm going to pay you next month. I promise you I'll catch you up. And what happened was, being the good guy, it caused turnovers. Mm-hmm. So I got to a point where there was enough of these people owed me money. And I went to JP Court and I was talking to a guy, and this was when I first got started in business, that had been a rental agent for about 25 years. And he said, we were talking about, he said, how long you been doing this? I said, I don't know, 6 months. He said, one thing you're going to learn is you're causing turnovers in your own homes. Mm-hmm. And I go, he explained why. He said, Mike, these people can get up $100 if they need to. to stay in their house. But when you get up where they're 3 or 4 months down, they got to come up with $400 or $500. They can't do it.
Yeah.
And so you're just putting an extra burden on them. So I got to a point where I wasn't callous about it. I listened to what they said and say, I understand, but I've got the note to pay to the bank. They're not going to let me put it off because I don't feel good this week, or I got an extra problem coming up. And they can get the money together, but you let somebody get behind 4 or 5 payments, you just starting a turnover. So I don't want you to be rude to customers or renters. That's not what I'm saying, but just be fair with them. Go, look, I don't have any choice. The bank expects me to pay them every month. I can't put them on. So somehow or another, you have to come up with the money, and you'll find out it causes less turnovers. And that's particularly if you've got a portfolio of maybe 10, 12, 15 homes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I know that's something that we've talked about on the podcast a lot, that sometimes you're exactly right. You're conditioning them to say,
change priorities.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I loan money to people that can't get loans, and it's an equity-based program. So I loan somebody. I mean, I loan the investor. I don't care if he robs 7-Eleven for a living. I don't care. I'm seriously, when I say that.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't loan people to rob 7-Elevens, but I would have. I'll let that go.
Maybe Macy's or something. 7-Eleven, I don't know if there's as much cash in the drawer.
If somebody wants to borrow $500,000, $1 million property, I'll loan it to them.
Yeah.
Particularly if it's rental property or investor property. And I charge them. My minimum down payment is 25%. Most of them pay 35 to 40% down. My interest rates are 12 to 15%. My points are 4 points. And I tell them when they call me on the phone, I go, this is a horrible loan. I wouldn't do it. It's horrible. Don't do it. I'm like, I got to get this house for my wife or kids, or I really got to get this house. I go, and they say they call everywhere. Nobody will make them a loan. I go, I'll make you a loan, but trust me, I'm a bandit.
Yeah.
I don't try to clean it up.
Yeah.
I mean, how are you going to tell a customer that paying 12% and 4 points is a good deal?
Mm-hmm.
You tell me that, gentlemen, I'll tell you, I can get off this air and write a book about that. So I don't tell them, if you're trying to buy something wholesale, don't tell people you're paying top dollar. They know better than that.
Mm-hmm.
So I do loan that money out, and I've got one rule: if you don't pay, you can't stay, and I really mean that. And I in the years I've been doing, I probably loaned. I carry about $20 million on the books right now of notes from people, and I foreclosed one piece of property in my lifetime on people that took notes from me. I don't want to foreclose it. That's not what I'm trying to do. I don't want to take their property away. I just want the cash flow and the money from it. So if they have a note with me and they get a payment down in the first 2 or 3 months, I rearrange their priorities, and they pay me because they got too much equity in the house. So I'm an equity lender. I'd rather loan somebody that's got bad credit, that maybe had a bankruptcy or foreclosure, that makes enough money to pay me back, than somebody with a credit that could lose his job tomorrow and puts 3% down on a house. If they're underwater, the lender's underwater when they make that loan.
Mm-hmm.
They can't come out of it unless the house appreciates a lot. So my philosophy is, if I'm going to do that, get enough equity in property to where they can afford to lose it. So they'll go sell their house before they let me take it. And that's not what I want to do. That's the last thing I want to do is foreclose somebody's house, even though I've got a lot of equity in it. It's just the nature of the beast, so I don't know, but financing is a key ingredient to buying any property, single family or duplexes or fourplexes. And incidentally, what we're talking about Fannie and Freddie, if you buy a fourplex, they count those as 4 units, not 1 unit. Mm-hmm. They count a duplex as 2 units. So if they're living as 10 units, you could have 2 duplexes and 1 fourplex in your homestead, and that's about it.
Yeah.
And I do advise, I'm going to again tell you, have your investors that are buying these homes, go to a local bank. You'd be surprised what local banks will do. As far as down payment's concerned, maybe it lets you in for a little less down payment. And they'll do loans like a 25-year amortization with a 5-year bullet on it, which means at the end of 5 years, it rolls over to whatever the current rate is at that time. They're not long-term loans where Fannie and Freddie go 30 years. The banks are going to go 5, 7, 10 years, something like that. Mm-hmm. Generally a shorter amortization period, and generally a little higher interest rate.
Why do you think that is that the smaller banks are willing to be that much more flexible, just because they need the business more than the big guys do? Or
I think that you're a small fish in a big pond with a company like Bank of America, Wells Fargo. Mm-hmm. And I do business with both those banks, so I'm not. But from an individual point of view, I borrow quite a bit of money for customers of mine because I do a lot of minimum construction loans, and I just get better service and faster service and more personal service from a local bank that's localized, or maybe they got 20 branches in the area, or 20 branches in the state, or 50 branches in the state.
Mm-hmm.
And I go in and introduce myself to the officer, tell him what I'm trying to do, sit down and talk to him, find out if he likes me, if I like him, and you don't have to go to one bank. There's so many banks. How many banks are in Buffalo? I bet.
I don't know. What would you guess, Steve?
Well, at one point, I remember I started this business in 2007, and I remember late 2007, early 2008, we were going around trying to get a business loan right at the time of the crash. And I think I went to every single bank. So I'm going to say probably 20 local banks at least. And
yeah, I was going to say, so if one bank doesn't like it, I'll tell you something else. Banks have what they say, have buckets. And a bucket may be consumer loans on cars. Another bucket may be residential loans. Another bucket may be investment properties. Another bucket may be business loans. And once those buckets are full, they don't want to make it any more loans. So you may go into a bank that likes what you're doing, would normally do that, and they'll tell you the bucket's full, which means that the regulators don't want more than 15-20% of the bank assets in that one bucket. That doesn't mean another bank's bucket's even halfway full.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, it just takes a lot of time and effort if you're going to make any money. But that, I know people that are worth a lot of money that made money, luckily. But 99% of the people I know that have any money work their butt off for it.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't inherit it. There's no magic pill. But it seems to me the harder you work, the more money you make. And I'll tell you something else, a pet peeve of mine. I don't even have an iPhone. I have a flip top phone, and that is suffice to run a $50 million business a month.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I don't email. I don't text. I have 3 citizens that work for me that text for me if I have to text, which maybe once or twice a day. I send out maybe 10 or 12 emails a day. But if you can't pick up the phone and call me on the phone, and so you listeners out there that think the 8th or the 11th commandment is thou shalt use a text phone or out of your court. I'm serious.
Yeah.
I mean, pick up your phone and call people. You don't lose stuff in translation. You can pick up your phone and call them. I can tell you this, that I bet 30% of the business calls I make, and it's generally from other people to make money or want to get money from me, 30 to 35% of my phone calls are not returned after calling 2 or 3 times.
Mm.
That is pathetic.
Yeah.
That is, so again, I don't know why people are born these days don't have the damn phone surgically inserted in their ear.
I think it's a good point you're bringing up, because as things become
it is
more,
a good point. Trust me.
As things become more convenient for people, it makes people lazier. So I remember
it does.
When I got out of school, I was trying to get a internship or a job, and I wasn't the brightest kid at my school. I didn't have like a GPA or a huge resume that I could pass across. So instead, I walked my resume to every company. I walked in, introduced myself, and gave them a resume because all my friends were just emailing everybody. And I had friends that had much better resumes than me, but I was the one getting calls back from people because they actually knew who they were talking to. And I think sometimes just doing that little bit of difference and taking that little bit of extra effort, you can kind of make a connection with somebody that you wouldn't have if you just sent a text.
Gentlemen, if you ever believe one thing I told you, it's a fact. Pick up the phone and call people. That text is great. I mean, I'm not saying don't use text at all.
Mm.
I'm not saying don't email, but pick up the phone and call somebody. And you might start out with something. You know what, Eric or Steve?
Yeah.
Y'all do podcasts, and I'm sure you know a hell of a lot more about it than I do. But I need your help. Have you ever thought about using that term? I need your help. People respond to that.
Mm-hmm.
I need your help to get a mortgage loan, or I need your help in advice, or I need your help on a title policy, or I need your help on a legal matter. And, so Cody, one of my guys, come in, and he just graduated from college about 5-6 years ago. He does very well here. Tell him what I'm constantly talking about: picking up the damn phone and calling people back.
Picking up the phone and calling people back. You can use your phone, you can use your email and your text. That's good for some forms of communication, but how are you supposed to build a relationship over a text message and an email? It's really hard. Everything gets misconstrued. You pick up the phone, you have a good conversation with people, it really resonates with them.
Mm-hmm.
It's a well-trained man right there.
Well, no, it's true. I mean, he's found out to be true.
Yeah, sure.
Quite frankly, there is someone here at this company now that I'm thinking about letting go because he doesn't believe in returning phone calls on a timely basis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I can tell you this, gentlemen, that I'd never leave my office until I return every phone call. I don't give a damn who it's from. I don't care if they're mad at me, think I'm a prick, think I screwed them over. I don't care what they think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm going to call them back on the phone. If it's somebody that wants me to invest in a deal they've got going, or maybe wants me to put more money in it, or maybe wants me to do something, and I don't intend to do it. I tell them, look, I don't have the money right now. I don't like the transaction. I'll still call them back and say, Bill, I thought it over. I just am not interested in it right now, but run the next bill by me. It's just a minute phone call, even if someone's mad at you. And I've returned very few phone calls from people mad at me, but some of them are. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you this, that the people that I don't call in a timely manner, and I have people call me on the phone and say, I left you a voicemail. And I go, well, if you left it on my phone, I don't get voicemails off my phone. So don't call me on my phone because I don't care. Call me at the office and I'll return every call every day. And I do that about 95% of the time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know, so that's not having anything to do with real estate. I'm just telling you, it's business, in my opinion. Pick up the phone and call people.
I was just going to say, that's just good advice, period. It doesn't have to be real estate. It's just, it's good advice about how to be
successful. And Eric, let me ask you a question. If y'all were out of a job, would you just send your resumes out, or would you call people on the phone, go by and sit down and talk to them if you could?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd go in and say, look, I need a job. My name's Eric. My name's Steve. I need a job. I work my butt off. I'm honest. Just give me a shot. In fact, I'll go to work for you for free. Try me for a week.
Yep.
100%. I've talked to people who said, I'm looking for a job, and I've sent out a bunch of resumes, and I'll say the same thing, just like you said and that Eric said. How many people have you gone and talked to? How many people have you sat down with or shook hands? That makes all the difference in the world, you know, and sticks out. You're more memorable, and those are the type of people that you want to hire.
Well, you give me a worker over an education, I'll take the worker every time and kick the educated ass. His ass. I would rather have an educated worker.
Sure.
But of the two, if I had my choice of somebody graduating from college and doesn't know a damn thing about working, or a worker, give me the worker.
Yeah.
And that's what employers are looking for. I know this is kind of off the subject of real estate, but I'm just talking in generalities here.
Well, I think it's worth asking. Do you have other employees in your office that are younger, like Cody's age? You said they're about 5-6 years out of school, or no?
Yeah, I'm the oldest living loan officer in the world, I think. Yeah. No, I've got everybody that works for me is younger than I am.
All right.
And I like the kids. I like the kids that are willing to work. You know, I tell these kids, look, you can always go get laid. You can always go to a movie. You can always go to a football game. You can always have a day, but you can't always make money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, so if you make money, the hell with it, make some money. And I'll tell you one thing that's always driven me is kind of greedy. I love money. I like what I can do with it. I like traveling. I don't like staying in shitty hotels or bad, or whatever you want to call it, clean it up, whatever you want to say. But,
we'll let the viewers or listeners know at the beginning. They can get
over it. But I'm just telling you, you know, that you have to have a drive in you that makes you want to succeed.
So, and how do you identify that in people? Like, if you're interviewing somebody, how can you really tell from somebody that you think they got that drive and they're just not somebody who's like kind of lazy and maybe just educated?
Have you gentlemen ever hired anybody yourself?
Steve has.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
A lot.
Steve, have you ever seen a resume that said, I'm not going to work, I'm a prick, I'm going to cause trouble, I'm going to gossip, and I'm not going to be worth a damn at your company?
I wish they did say that sometimes. I wish they did say that. It'd make it a lot easier.
I agree.
Yeah.
I can pick it up maybe 30% of the time, but the other time, the 70%, I'll get lucky. And if an employee starts working for me and they're workers, I'll make them. If they got any brains, I'll help them along, get where they want to go. Yeah. If they're just lazy and not worth a damn, I let them go. I go, look, we're not working together. I think you can find a better location somewhere else or a better position somewhere else. But I don't want to prolong it. Yeah. I know pretty quick within 2 weeks' time if they're going to work out or not. Yeah. Cody, when he came to work for me, honest to God, and I love Cody to death. He's been with me 5 years. When he came down here from Minnesota, he didn't even know what the word mortgage was. I started him out at $10 an hour, and that's I only hired him because he's a friend of one of my secretaries, as a matter of fact. And after about 2 months, I said, Cody, do you want to make some money? He said, I absolutely do. Yeah. And I said, here's what we're going to start doing. You're going to start working. And he did work we asked him to do, but he was never anything overly. And so I gave him a chance, and he took that chance and ran with it. I'm really proud of him for doing that.
Right. Cool.
I like people who want to help themselves.
Yeah. I think something that you mentioned, which I think is a pretty key component, and I've tried to stick to with my business as well, is hire slow and fire fast. If they're not going to work,
exactly.
Yeah, you gotta make decisions. You can't let them linger around. There's been plenty of times where I've given too many chances and said, we'll give it another shot or give it another week, see how it goes, give it another chance. But in the most part, I think you hire slow, fire fast, and you find that right team as quick as you can.
And interviewing college students for that matter. Mm-hmm. I look at college students as work through college. I mean, somebody that lives on, I don't agree with student loans the way they're done right now. Never have, never will. I think it's a joke.
Mm-hmm.
I think most of these students go to college, they get paid for tuition, books, living expenses, and they don't care what the hell they do. And they owe all this money when they get out of school. I personally think student loans should be available, but I think it should be available only for students at work. I mean, let's face it, guys. College is, if you take a full course, it's 15 hours. We're talking about 15 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
College was easier to be than high school. Right. That, it's 40 hours a week, 45 hours a week in high school. So these students that are going to college on the government's dime, I personally think you ought to be able to get a student loan if you have a job. And if you, for example, if you're going to take 12 hours a semester, then you ought to have a job where for as many hours you're working a semester, a 12-hour job. And if you can't find a job to get your student loan, you're going to go have to volunteer in a public library, a school, to teach these kids how to read and write. To get your student loan, you're going to have to put in 12 hours worth of community service a week or get a job.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to check on it every month. And if you fail, you don't get another student loan until you bring your grades up.
Sure.
That'd stop a lot of this BS. But I look for kids out of college that have worked their way through college and had a job. I always had a job. It didn't kill me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. I think more work ethic is definitely a good thing, and seems to be generational. Yeah, it's disappearing fast. I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
These kids don't have a clue. I just went to Harvard, not school. I don't have the brains to get in Harvard, but I went up there and a friend of mine's son's graduating from Harvard this year after 4 years, and it's a medical doctor. And I was just amazed how smart these kids were, but none of them had a lick of sense. None of them had ever worked a day in their lifetime. I go, how are you going to go out in this market and not knowing ever working? So I'm a big believer in working.
Yeah.
Always have been and always will be. And that's Cody's background. He worked through high school. He worked through college. He paid in houses in the college and sold insurance. Mm-hmm. Now, anybody can sell insurance in college and can make it. It's got my blessing.
Yeah.
That's a tough sale for me.
So, Mike, we don't want to take up too much more of your time, but one last question I wanted to ask you. You mentioned before some of these books that weren't worth anything, these books on tapes that you're hearing at some of these events that you're at on stage. What is a good book that you do give out to people? What is a book that you'd actually give to somebody, and why is the reason that you give them that?
That's an interesting question, and I don't know the answer to that.
All right.
Because I don't like reading them after about 3 or 4 pages. That, if somebody writes a book about how to make $1 million in the real estate business, and I read a few paragraphs about it, they've done 3 deals in their lifetime, I don't really think they know much what the hell they're talking about. I think they know the numbers and that sort of thing, but really not one of those books has really said you got to dig down and work. Mm-hmm. They all want to say you make $1 million in a year with only 15 minutes worth a week.
Yeah,
it ain't going to happen.
Yeah,
it's not going to happen. Right. So I don't like to read autobiographies. I read a lot of books. I read probably 2 books a week. Mm-hmm. I read fiction stuff I enjoy, but I don't particularly like to read that sort of thing for whatever reason. It's not because I don't think I can learn from it.
Yeah,
it's not entertaining to me, and I do enough.
You read for escape more so than trying to get back into work.
Yeah, I'm pretty intense at work.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm busy all the time. I've got 2 phones on my desk. I've got people coming in out of my office, and I love the action. So when I get off, I just want to relax. I can go home. My wife wants to talk about business. I go, I do not want to talk about it. It's 9 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night. I'm going to have a drink, watch TV, smoke a cigarette, and read a damn book. And that's it's the only peaceful time I have. So that's not an unfair question to ask me. Yeah. But I do think a lot of those books, and I look, they're smarter than I am. Some of those guys are making millions of dollars a year selling books and tapes that aren't worth the paper they're written on. Mm-hmm. So who's smarter, me or them? I don't take anything away from them. I just don't think from a practical point of view, you can learn much from a book about making money.
Yeah.
Experience over anything else, right?
Right. And hard work.
Yeah.
I keep on coming back to the word work hard.
Yeah. Well, I think it's probably a cyclical problem in that people don't want to buy a book that says work really hard and that's how you're going to make money. They want that quick fix solution. So that's what sells and that's what people put out. So,
and most of those books are that way. I mean, and again, if I could do it, I could do it. I just don't want to do it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I could write a really kick-ass book about how to make money in real estate and all the things I've done, because there isn't one task of real estate I've done development. I build homes. I build many warehouses. I take notes. I mean, there isn't anything in the real estate business I haven't done. Not one thing. And a lot of it I've done well. A lot of it I haven't done worth a damn on. I can tell you what not to do. I can't tell you what to do in certain circumstances, but I can tell you what not to do. Mm-hmm. So I keep pretty much with what I know, and when I venture out into other things, investment-wise, I generally don't do as well. and because I don't know enough about what I'm doing, so I just try to stay away from it.
Well, I would say if there's three things that I've picked up mainly from this this podcast here, it's don't be afraid to make an offer. Like, who cares? Be persistent. Yeah. Pick up a phone, and just work hard. That seems like
right, and check the different lending venues. I would bet that 50% of the loan we get are for investors through banks, not through Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac.
One last question, actually. I know I said that already before. What's your opinion on credit unions? Any difference between them? Yeah.
Credit unions are pretty easy to work with. Their rates are generally good. They're not trying to make as much money as banks do. Mm-hmm. They're a lot easier to work with. The ones I deal with, we do a lot of business with credit unions, not particularly from the commercial side, but if you're a member of credit unions, they don't look at a lot. Most of them do not look at their members like customers. Mm-hmm. They look at them like family. It's really it really is kind of neat the way they look at customers.
Yeah.
Because a credit union, if you're a member of a credit union, they look at you like a family. They don't look at you like it's just a customer coming in and borrowing money. I think they're great resources. I really do.
Okay. Cool.
I like credit unions.
Yeah. Well,
and I've had good experience with them. And trust me, if I had bad experience, I'd tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. You're definitely an honest guy. You can pick that up pretty quick.
Well, I hope I am.
That's why, like, people who don't have as much of a filter or no filter, it's like you just know what they're saying to you is just what they think. And I always appreciate that.
But, I do think I'm let me put it this way. If I think a bank's screwing me around, I'll just jump right in. I go, you're out of your friggin' mind if you think I'm going to do that. What do you think? I'm stupid or what? I mean, I don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't care anymore because I know enough. I know when I'm putting a deal together that makes sense to me. And I'll never put a deal together for an investor or somebody that I don't believe in myself, and I wouldn't loan the money myself if I had the capability of doing it or the resource to do it. So I don't send stuff to banks just to make money. I send stuff to banks that makes sense for them to do and sense for me to do and sense for my investor to do. I mean, anybody can make commission. I've always said, don't worry about the money you're making. Worry about your customer, and the commission will take care of themselves. Right. And I truly believe that. Right. I bet 60% of our business here is repeat customers over and over and over again over the years.
Right.
So maybe that's a great question to ask somebody if they're looking at a loan officer. What percentage of your business is repeat customers? There's all sorts of things. Yeah.
It's a good thought.
Yeah. Well, why don't we end it on a good thought that I had, because that might have been the only one. And I'm selfish that way.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate the interview, and I hope it does people some good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we appreciate your time, Mike. Thank you again.
Yeah.
Good luck, guys.
Take care.
All right, bye. That was kind of fun.
Was that fun, Mike?
Yeah, it was.